Welcome back, everybody, to The Unexpected Gardener. My name is Sabrina, and I have a very special guest today for myself because I need an education, but also for all of you because you might be, especially with the whole egg thing happening nowadays and the egg prices and I mean, I feel like this happens every couple of years where egg prices go up and everybody's like, I need chickens and all that. So my friend Laura is the Girly Homesteader and she's in Ohio and she is a wealth of information. She's like a chicken mama. And actually, if you don't follow her, start to follow her because she's really funny and just really, really great tidbits. So as soon as I knew that I was getting close to having chickens, I thought, oh, she's the one I need to interview. Welcome, Laura.
Well, thank you. Yeah, actually, just yesterday, my husband and I went to the grocery store and there were barely any eggs. The only eggs that were available were like the fancy eggs, and they were like $10 a dozen, and that's even here in Ohio. I
Yeah.
figured that $10 price was like, I don't know, California and places like that, but apparently
Yeah.
it's true in Ohio too.
Yeah, it's a thing. Well, and I buy all my eggs from my local farmers,
Yeah.
and so I don't generally even pay attention to what it is at the store.
Uh-huh.
But I mean, and they're like, I feel like they're really reasonable. It's like $7, 7.50 for free
Yeah.
range, good, good, happy eggs.
Right. That is what I charge. And I used to think that I was like, I don't know, that it was just really expensive. But now, gosh, the people who are buying eggs from me, I feel like it's a steal. But
Yeah, it is. It is. Well, so if you didn't guess, what Laura is going to teach us about is chickens and chicken keeping. And so those of you that follow me on social media probably have seen that I started a nonprofit. I know, it's very
I'm
exciting.
so excited.
I know. I'll tell you, it's completely crazy how fast everything has happened. And it is not because of me. I did not like seek out land or anything. It was literally like somebody came to me and was like, "Hey, want to use my land?" And I'm like, "Sure." I mean, it was like that. It was crazy. But now, we went out to the property and we've got a quarter of an acre and which is huge. I thought that wasn't that big. I don't know. I'm not like spatially aware, evidently, but so we really want to get chickens, like pretty quickly, once we get, things going over there. And so then I thought, I follow so many people that talk about chickens and share things about chickens like tidbits, but you know how it is. Like if you don't need to know that information at that moment, you'll like,
Yeah.
kind of pay attention, but not really absorb it. So I feel completely clueless. And so I want you to talk to me like I'm like in kindergarten and I have no
Okay.
like a chicken 101 for dummies. And of course I'll have questions along the way, but like the first thing, we're kind of bougie when it comes to eggs. And my husband even said it to me. He was like, make sure when when you talk to Laura that you ask her about like what kind of chickens do you get to get like the green eggs and the blue eggs and all
Hmm.
that. So I'm definitely going to want to cover that if you
Okay.
can. But what's the first thing I should do now that I know, this is where we want to go, or what do I do first?
So, the first thing is to actually get your coop set up. I know that you want to go and buy the babies now, but the reality is they grow so fast. And like so fast that they get very annoying very quickly in your home. So, you have to remember the baby chicks, like when you get them and they're a day old, which is generally how you're getting them at a hatchery, they need to be like 90 degrees.
Okay.
And yeah, so they need to be very, very toasty. And generally, the rule of thumb is that you can go down by 5 degrees every week. So, keeping that in mind, you have to think about where you're going to keep these little guys when they are baby. If you do it a little bit later in the year, like you will be, that will actually work to your advantage because you can get them outside sooner.
Okay.
Okay. So like the first time that we got chickens, that was back in 2020. And I will admit, we did it and we had them ordered even before it was like like the pandemic like thing. Okay. So at that during that year, we got them in February, and it was fine because we were excited. But what ended up happening is that it's still freezing cold in March here in Ohio, as I'm sure it still can be in North Carolina too.
Sure.
But you have to, again, they get so big and they get very dusty and
Oh,
annoying.
weird. Really?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, yes, yes. So, like, the first year we got them, we figured, oh, we're going to keep them in our basement. Well, we brought these little babies home and we saw them, and there was no way in the world we were keeping them in the basement. We brought them upstairs. You are going to get so attached. So, now, of course, being at the farm, it'll be a little different situation, but you need somewhere that's going to keep them nice and warm if it is a cooler time of year.
Okay.
So you are, of course, going to need time to get your coop and all of that set up. So you have time. So, like, temperature, I don't think is going to be as big of a factor in your situation just because it will, because, like, what's it like temperature wise there now?
It's like it's getting up like it's 70 during the
Okay.
day, like high
Okay.
60s, 70s, but at night it can still get like high 30s, low 40s at night.
Okay.
So, so you'd have to get like some sort of heater, I'm
Yes.
assuming. I mean, because my house is 68, 70
Right.
degrees.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so heater. Okay.
Yeah. So there's there's generally two different ways that you can keep them warm. You can use a heat lamp, which is generally what we have used too. It's like those big red
Okay.
lights. Um, and those, I don't know, there's mixed opinions on those. I have never had, thankfully, knock on wood, any catastrophe happen. But if you don't safely secure those, they could fall and cause a fire or something like
Oh,
that. So a lot
okay.
of times people are very hesitant of those. But again, I've never had issues. But the other option is what is called a brooder plate. And it's basically like a panel that provides radiant heat for the chicks. Now, they have to stay pretty darn close to that thing. And so, if you really want to get in there and like play with them and handle them, the brooder plate gets in the way.
Okay.
So, we have some of those and we do put them in our coop at winter time just as like extra heat in case it's like in the single digits here. Um, but for like the basics, the heating lamps are good as long as you are sure that it is secure.
Okay.
How many chicks are you envisioning getting?
I have no idea.
Okay.
That's kind of I could well because I guess the area that we were thinking they'd go
Uh-huh.
is it's like pretty big. So
Uh-huh.
and I know that's kind of what I need to learn is how much room do they need? I mean,
Mhm.
in my mind it's like, oh, we're at the farm and the chickens are all free and but I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, they could be, picked up by predators. I mean, they have to be in a safe place. I mean, especially
Yes.
I'm assuming all the time, but maybe just at night. Again, I'm a kindergartner. Teach me your ways. But I'm assuming I want to have like a good amount, because we want to eventually we'll want to be able to teach people how to chicken keep too, so
Uh-huh.
that they can do it at their own
Okay.
property. And then we'll certainly sell the eggs, like the nonprofit will sell the eggs too.
Uh-huh.
Um, but maybe I should start like small-ish so that I'm not overwhelmed.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you've heard the term chicken math. You can start small in terms of the actual amount of birds that you get, but it is true that you will always want more, and especially with you being in this teaching situation, like the more you have, the more you can teach and the more helpers you'll need.
Yeah.
So, I would design the coop to fit a ton and the enclosed
Okay.
area to fit a ton of them, but then maybe start out with just a few. Generally, hatcheries, I think the minimum for them is like 6 chicks. So you're probably going to be getting at least six. But I don't know, make it 12 if you want to.
Yeah, I mean, why not? I mean,
Yeah, because the
so
reality is when you're taking care of six, you might as well take care of 12 at that point, especially if that is your goal to get larger. But for most people who are just keeping them in their backyards, you are limited on space because, like, our
sure.
coop right now, we custom built it. But we have 15 at the moment, and that is probably our max. So again, you're going to want to fit as many chickens in there as possible eventually. So build it as big as you will ever need, I guess is my advice there.
Okay. And if you're not like I mean, I am surrounded by lots of building people
Uh-huh.
that, are talented in that way. I am not. So I would not be like, oh, I'm just going to build it. But I
Uh-huh.
do know people that are probably skilled at that and can do that. So do you need like a certain size like each chicken needs a certain amount of space to be healthy and active and,
In the coop, which is, so there's going to be two different words that I'm using. The coop is like the box, envision, where they
okay.
sleep at night. The run is, well, you wouldn't have to have a run necessarily, but the run, envision that as like the fenced in place that keeps them a little bit safer, or it also keeps them out of your garden.
Yeah, right. Because I know you don't want to just have them free in there.
They will terrorize everything.
Yeah.
They, yeah, they will terrorize everything. So the coop area, you generally want to have about a square foot of space per bird in there, but that is minimum. And so that's why I say that my coop is probably maxed out
Okay.
at 15. So when chickens go to bed, they actually sleep up on bars or roosts, and they like to just sleep up off the ground. So you'll want to make sure that you have enough of those for all the birds as well. Once
Okay.
they get to adult size, because remember too, they're going to be tiny, but then eventually they will need about a foot of space per bird. There's different theories about what you can keep in the coop versus not. We take the approach because, again, here in Ohio, it gets cold during the winter. And you generally, the healthiest birds, at least in wintertime, they are dry. If your birds are cold and wet, that's not good. If they are
Okay.
cold and dry, that is better. So in the coop, we prefer to keep no food or water in there because that can also, the water, it creates, moisture in the air. And also, if they are eating and drinking in there, they make more messes, if they're knocking over their food and things. So for us, our coop is strictly for sleeping and for laying eggs. So laying eggs, the nest boxes, those are generally about a foot square. And you'll have just some bedding in there, whether you want it to be pine shavings or straw or whatnot. And that's where they lay their eggs. So you really don't need many nest boxes per, like, you don't need, so like I have 15 chickens, I only have 3 nest boxes.
Okay.
And
So they
sometimes,
each chicken doesn't need one.
no, they always fight, actually. It's like one day, one will be the popular nest box, and they will literally, I have opened up the lid of mine, and you'll see them like sitting on top of each other because they're trying to fight for that spot to lay their egg.
That's so funny.
So yes, even with 15 chickens, even at the end of the day, sometimes I will have eggs only in 2 of the boxes, and one will be empty. So they like to lay their eggs where everybody else is laying them.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah, so you might need one nest box per 4 or 5 birds or so,
Okay.
because I have one per 5. Um, so nest boxes, I okay, so here's where your personality comes into play when you are taking care of chickens. And of course, when you are teaching people, you're going to have lots of different personality types. But there are so many ways to make chicken keeping much easier. And some people, they like to go out there, every single day and clean the coop. I am not one of those people. But there's so many little things that you learn as you are chicken keeping that go into your style of doing it. One thing you also want to take into consideration too is just how you are moving around the coop. And so because you are starting brand new with, so do you have electric available? That is correct.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
do.
There is electric available.
Okay.
Pretty close. It's pretty close to where we were going to put the coop, but we can always put the coop even
Okay.
closer to that if we need to.
Okay.
What do you need that for?
Well, electric, it is convenient. You don't necessarily need it, but there's so many automatic doors out there right now that are battery operated. And the batteries, they do last a decent amount of time, but we have 2 doors on our coop actually, or well, our whole setup. On the coop where they sleep Ours is actually hardwired. My husband just figured out how to do that. That is nice just because if your batteries die and you don't know it, especially because this is somewhere where you're not going to be every day,
Yeah. Yeah,
you
because I'm
don't
not
want,
living there.
exactly, you don't want your batteries to die and just, the door gets stuck open or it gets stuck closed. So power can be helpful. And
Okay.
also, if you want to put in those heater panels like we do in ours, now you might not need them as much down there. Because again, those are our like auxiliary heat that we really only turn on when it's like in the single digits.
Yeah, it doesn't get I think we had like whatever polar vortex this
Yeah.
past winter,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it was like less than a week
Okay.
and it was like 15 degrees or something, which is pretty cold for here.
Yeah.
Usually it's not, it doesn't get that cold.
Okay. Yeah, because one thing too, and it's hard to say this because it sounds so cruel, but you don't want to baby them too much. And
Sure.
what I
Yeah, it
mean
makes sense.
is,
Yeah.
yeah, like if you keep it too toasty in the coop during winter time, they won't ever want to leave. And so then they won't eat, they won't drink, they won't move around, and they'll just be cramped and, they'll
That's
be little
funny.
homebodies. And so if you baby them in one area of their living space, they're not going to be able to tolerate those temperatures.
That's so funny because it's just like kids.
Yeah.
I remember when my best friend, I had already had one kid, and my best friend had her first kid, and then he didn't like eat his food right away. And so she's like, "Oh, let me warm it up." And I'm like, "Don't warm it up." And she's like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Don't get him used to like it's like he needs to know like if he eats it right away, it's nice and warm and it tastes a certain way, and if he just sits there and refuses to eat it, you're not going to keep warming it up for him because she'd warm
Yeah.
it up several times.
Okay.
It's just like the same thing. It's like
Mhm.
no, or give a kid a cold bottle. If you're giving him formula, give him a cold bottle because if you start warming it up, then they are going to make it much more difficult for you. And if you're in a situation where you can't give them warm milk, then you're like, oh no, what do I do? Whereas if they're used to a cold, they don't care. So same principle for chickens, evidently. That's very smart.
Uh-huh. Yes, yes. And yeah, I mean, like the things that you definitely want to watch for are just drafts and humidity. So if you can keep
Oh,
the drafts down to a minimum and then also the humidity down. So I mean, like you need some ventilation, but not too much.
yeah, the humidity here is like brutal. So
Yes.
the area we were thinking about putting them, because I figured it would probably, because the summers here are brutal, really,
Yeah.
really hot. And it's like it's like kind of there's trees. It's like at the base of, there's a bunch of trees there. And I think around like 11-ish, uh, noonish, it starts to get shaded there.
Oh,
And
perfect.
so I thought that's a good place to put them
Yes.
because they'll be in shade,
Uh-huh.
they'll be protected from the elements a little bit, and then they're not gonna, because I mean, heat in the middle of like July and August, it is just like, it's gross. It's
Oh
so
yeah.
hot here.
Oh yeah. So
Okay.
shade is very, very important because actually, and here I am talking about chickens in the wintertime, but the reality is heat is actually a bigger issue for chickens than cold is. So the fact that you
Hmm.
have that shade is wonderful.
Okay, that's where I'll put them then. That's what I was
Yes.
thinking, but
Yeah, ours actually are in the shade too. I'm sure you've heard of the mushroom chicken of the woods. Yes.
no.
Oh, okay. Well,
No, I
here
don't think so.
there's a mushroom that's called chicken of the woods, and that's what we refer to our chickens as because they are in the woods. They are the
Oh,
chickens of the
that's
woods.
cute.
But come summer, when the leaves come in on the trees, it's so good for them because it is so much cooler there. So that will be a good setup. Let's see. Okay, so your coop. Back to kind of thinking through like moving around the coop and the most ergonomic ways to do things because you are starting out brand new. I know that in my dream coop, I would be able to clean it when I'm standing in there, like walking around. My coop is one of those typical ones where it's elevated from the ground. And so,
Okay.
although that makes it, like waist level when I'm getting rid of their poop and everything, um, it is a little bit more work. Like I wish that I could just walk into my coop rather than having to open up a door over my head. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Just to
I did
walk
not think
to
of
their
that.
area.
So basically, you want one where you can like walk in, but then where they're
Hmm.
roosting and everything that they're going to be spending time on is above, is up
Yes.
higher, but their
Yeah.
bottom is just,
Is where the
okay.
poop is. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the poop being at foot level on the ground, that just makes more sense. So in my dream coop someday, that's how it would be. So again, if you're starting fresh and you're a little bit nervous about building, you could always buy one of those pre-made sheds and then turn it into a coop. I've seen that done a lot of times.
Okay.
I don't know. That could be just a thought because critter proofing is so important. So important. Everything will try and get your chickens because unfortunately they are at the bottom of the
Sure.
food chain.
Well, they're
They
delicious,
are.
so I can
Yeah,
understand.
they are. So I don't know like what kind of predators you guys have there, but we have fox, we have raccoons, we have
Yeah.
coyotes, we
Yep.
have hawks.
All of those. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm definitely, those of you who've been listening or following me, like I'm unexpected gardener because I'm a city girl with like literally no skills. So my thing is, oh, I'm just gonna buy one. Like
Okay.
go and figure out like the best design, taking what you said, because that makes a lot of sense what you just said about cleaning it. Um, I have shaken off a lot of my city girl tendencies. However, when it comes to like poop, animal poop, I am not down with that. So I have had a couple people like, I'll volunteer, I'll come and do the poop. Because, when you have a nonprofit, you got to have people come help,
Mhm.
to run things and whatnot. So I'm hoping that there's just going to be this long line, or I'll make my kids do it. Long line of people who want to deal with poop because I'm not a fan, like at all. So that's another thing that makes me a little nervous.
Okay.
Um, I do remember seeing like various chicken reels or whatever on Instagram, and I remember one was like, use this method and it's
Okay.
like never going to be stinky. And I feel
Yeah.
like it was like sand or
Okay.
something like that. I don't, because of course I didn't really pay super close attention because I didn't really need to know that information at the time. But so give it to me straight. Like, what am I
Okay.
looking at here?
I bet that they were talking about what is called the deep litter method. I have a feeling that's what they were talking about. So, when we started with chickens, we did what everybody normally does is you put pine shavings in the bottom. They poop on that and then once a week or so, you pull it all out and you can compost it. Now, in my experience, pine shavings take forever to decompose,
Yeah,
even
they
when they're
do.
mixed with chicken
Yep.
poop. Like, I thought it was going to be this fantastic thing, but it wasn't at all. So, I eventually, probably 2 or so years now, I switched over to sand, which you did
Oh,
mention.
okay.
And sand is wonderful because essentially it's the concept of like kitty litter, where you're
Sure.
just scooping out the poop. And that's what I do. I actually bought off Amazon like a telescoping handle kitty litter scooper thingy. And so that works for me where my poop is at my poop is at waist height and I can scoop it out. Now that can be stinky. So with chickens, they can be very prone to respiratory issues. Ammonia is what makes the chicken poop really stink. Ammonia, uh, that is also what can cause respiratory issues in the chickens as well. What I discovered when I first started out with switching over to sand is that it actually does nothing to help with the smell at all. So that's why I think that they were talking about a different method. But what I have done to mitigate the ammonia with sand is I use this stuff that is called the compound is called zeolite. It's like a natural mineral. And I've talked to one of my clients is a chemist and I've talked to her about it and I'm pretty sure that the okay, so ammonia she said is very basic on the pH scale. I think is right. And so to neutralize it, you can use something that is acidic. I'm pretty sure that's how it is. And so this zeolite powder, this mineral, if you sprinkle that on there, it neutralizes the ammonia. And actually, my coop really doesn't smell that much. But again, that is because I'm not using just sand. So every time I clean the coop, I scoop the poop out. I sprinkle in some of this mineral in there. And so that neutralizes the ammonia. So my coop is not that stinky, but if you were to strictly use sand in the bottom, it could get stinky. So, what I know about the deep litter method is that you are essentially composting in the chicken coop. So,
Okay.
yes. So you basically just leave the poop and the bedding or whatever you're using in there. A lot of people right now are using hemp bedding. It breaks down faster than those pine shavings and it's a little bit more fine. I actually have some of this and you can sift through it too. But, anyways, the point of the deep litter method is that you're keeping all of that stuff in there for long enough that it can actually start to break down and become compost. And so, by that aerobic activity, it supposedly, keeps it non stinky. I don't know, but
Okay.
I have never tried it.
Okay.
I don't
So in
know.
other words, I need to have volunteers come out like every 2 days so that we never get to the point where
Yeah,
it's stinky.
to get started, yes. Oh, now here is a piece of advice too. Okay. If you are going to have all of the droppings on the floor, make sure that their doors are high enough from the ground so that they don't kick bedding into the door because that will gum it up and it won't open
Ah.
correctly and it will be a pain. So
Okay.
they can go up little ladders and steps. So just like elevate their door from the floor and your life will be
Okay.
easier.
I'm like taking notes here. I'm taking notes.
So let's see. Okay, the coop. Yeah, again, just get as big as you would ever think you would need. A shed might be a nice option. Now, I would go around it though and like check with a fine tooth comb to see for any openings because,
Sure.
again, any type of critter will try to get in there. Another piece of advice is that chicken wire does not keep critters away from your chickens. It keeps your chickens away from things. The only
Yeah, because
stuff
that's they can chew right through that.
Yes. The only stuff that is actually predator proof is hardware cloth.
Yeah. Okay.
So if you would have like a window in this shed or something, you can attach hardware cloth just to make sure that nothing gets in there. So that's the
Oh
coop.
goodness.
That is the coop setup. Now, so on the topic of predators, this is another thing where you kind of need to keep your personality and your thought process about this in check. When you have chickens, you are going to lose them. You just are. Uh, you can either do every single thing that you can to try and keep the predators away, but what comes with that is generally a smaller space for them to be able to free range and be happy. Because as you know, predators can also come in from on top, like
Or
hawks.
yeah.
We had a hawk attack a couple weeks ago, and in our situation, in my mind, I would rather have my chickens have farther space to roam around without being covered from the top because if I would have just an enclosed box for them, they wouldn't be as happy, And so, but there's different ways to go about it. You choose to keep them like completely buttoned up, completely safe, and you probably won't have any issues with predators, but they might just be in a little bit of a smaller enclosure. So,
Yeah, because I was gonna say, I mean, because free range doesn't necessarily mean running all around
no.
the property, without. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
I know some people do that. Some people do that,
Right.
and the chickens instinctually go into the woods or whatever.
Yes.
Um, but you're losing tons of chickens that way. And actually, one of my farmers, she's my grass-fed beef farmer. She was like, her chickens were like really free range in the beginning, and the the hawks got so smart that when her livestock guardian dogs, because they like patrol like the whole
Uh-huh.
property, and they would literally wait until they would patrol past the areas where chickens were, and they got to the other side of the farm, and then they would just plucking chickens off. And
Yeah.
so it got to the point where she's like, all right, I gotta come up with something better here because I'm losing too many.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that there's probably tons and tons of predators in this. So you don't think, like, even if you have like a huge area, like a big fenced in area, and you had a top, you think that that wouldn't be happy? Chickens wouldn't be happy?
Oh, well, if it was huge, sure. Oh,
Yeah,
definitely.
okay.
Yeah.
Because
It's
I'm,
just that putting a roof over that much of a space is hard to do.
Because you could do like a fence top.
Yes. And that's what, yeah, so like our chickens, we have our coop and then our run. It is enclosed with like chain link fence. And we have a decent amount of space there. It's just that covering that,
Sure.
like technically if we wanted to, we could put like bird netting and stuff like that over it, but I don't know. We haven't. I don't know. That's just our preference because it's
Yeah,
a lot of space that we'd have to cover.
for sure. Yeah. Well, I
And
was
then
thinking you could.
also, I've heard horror stories too of hawks trying to get your chickens, but then they get caught in that bird netting and then they get injured. And technically, like you aren't allowed to touch hawks. And so then you're in, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what would happen.
I was thinking like you could be like a giant like dog crate,
Uh-huh.
but it's a
Yes, a
chicken
giant
crate.
dog crate would be sweet. That would
Yeah.
be
So
absolutely
just like fence
fantastic.
on the top.
Right.
But again, I'm not. I don't build things, so I'd have to, you know,
Yeah.
all the amazing builders in my life. I'd be like, hey, can you build a chicken coop? I mean, and it's a nonprofit, and we like there's literally I have $50 in our nonprofit checking account, which is what I
Uh-huh.
put in there to open it, and then we've gotten $150 in donations. So, it's when you do a nonprofit, it's like there's not.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously we're going to put in a lot of our own money to get things going, but you're relying on people who either have skills to donate or materials to donate or whatever to help
Right.
kind of get things up and running. Okay, so the coop and like it's okay to just go buy a coop. Like
Oh
you can
yeah.
just
It's fine.
there's probably a million choices, but the kind of the things you talked about, I think will really help me pick a good one if I end up just buying one
Yeah, there's
or
definitely
whatever.
nothing wrong with buying a coop that's pre-made. It's just that I would go the extra mile to check, maybe reinforce some connections of some places, or if there's a window, maybe
Yeah.
again go the extra mile to put some hardware cloth because some of the pre-made ones, at least from what I have seen, like some of our neighbors, they have them. Like they just you might want to just make sure they're a little bit more predator proof, at least
Yeah,
for what
that
they're
makes sense.
using. That's all.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Okay,
Yeah.
so now when you use the sand,
Hmm.
what do you do with the poop? Are you putting it somewhere so it can like decompose for a while before you put it in
Uh-huh.
your garden, or or you do not even use it for fertilizer?
I do use it in my garden. Last year was the first year that I really started trying to make some sort of compost with it. We live on the edge of woods, and so we always have tree work done, and so we have lots of wood chips just from random things happening around our house. And so I have had piles of wood chips that I use on the paths in my garden. But what I do now is every time I clean the coop, I mean, of course, you are going to have some sand stuck to that poop, but basically, I just have a 5 gallon bucket with some poop on there. I throw it on my wood chip pile, and I use like this compost turner or corkscrew sort of
Mm-hmm.
deal. And I just kind of mix them in there. And generally, it does break down pretty darn well by the next season. And so I will put that as mulch on my garden. And then actually, when it is winter time, when my garden is resting, I'll just throw the chicken poop straight on top of my beds and just let it sit there all throughout winter. I have never, because the issue with chicken poop is that people say it's really hot
Right.
fertilizer and then it does need to decompose. Now, I'm not sure though if this zeolite mineral that I use, if that helps too, because it does neutralize the ammonia. That might make it less hot on its own. I'm not really sure. I'm not trusting that guess enough to just like throw it straight on my garden
Sure.
right
Yeah.
now. But that might be part of the issue. I haven't had any issues with it.
That's great. I mean, well, and for those of you who don't kind of know about like those kind of fertilizers, like I am a big fan of worm castings or
Hmm.
worm poop because that's not hot at all. So you
Right.
can literally go from the worm farm to your garden and it's not going to burn your plants. But when you're talking any kind of manure like cow manure, horse manure, chicken manure, it has to decompose for a certain amount of time. And in some cases, like a year, 6 months to
Yeah.
a year, so that when you put it in your garden, it doesn't hurt your plants. Rabbit poop is the exception to that. You can go right in, which is great. So in the interest of kind of sort of creating like a closed loop. I mean,
Hmm.
that's really what we're all trying to do when we have little homesteads,
Right.
is have a closed loop so that you're providing your own fertilizer or your own compost for your gardens. That it's great to have an option like to use the droppings like from chickens for that.
Yeah, I'm definitely
Um,
not scientific at all. I just throw it on there, mix it in,
no,
the
me either.
part, and like I kind of like I have like two or three different piles of wood chips. One of them is the oldest. That's where I started, and then I just keep kind of moving over to the right to the newer wood chips. But again, it's really not scientific. I'm just throwing poop on a pile. Is what I'm doing.
It's so funny what you said too about like depending on your personality and
Yeah.
when you're teaching. I have the whenever I teach a sourdough class, I'm a I don't know if I would say I'm a type B personality. I don't even know what that means actually. I know what type A means. And I think I'm type A in some areas like of like business and some of the work I do, I might be a little more type A and like really meticulous about things. But like in general, I am a fly by the seat of my pants person. So when I have a type A person in my sourdough class, I always joke, I'm like, who's type A here? And then like, usually it's at least two people will raise their hand. I'm like, I'm just going to apologize to you now because I'm going to teach you to do sourdough with like your heart. And we're going to break some rules. And they're just like, dude, are you kidding me? And sometimes they just look at me with this look like, please don't make me do this because I don't like when I teach people how to feed starter, I don't measure. Like this is what we're going to do. And they're like, what do you mean we're not going to measure? So I can see how it's the same thing, if you have a certain personality style, you're going to be meticulous about this and you need parameters. And honestly, I feel like I am helping to free people that when I
Yeah.
teach them sourdough because it's like, yes, rules are great and having like, clear parameters are great, but sometimes you just got to break free. And so I'm definitely more of a fly by the seat of my pants kind of chicken mama, I think is what I'm going to be like. So,
And yeah,
um,
and that's totally fine. So like that's where the automation is gonna be huge. Absolutely going to be huge. So like
so you mean like
automatic
the doors, like that open?
doors and also high capacity food and water.
Okay, that's my
Yeah.
next like tick off my list here. So food
So do you
and
have
water.
water accessible on the
Yes.
property? Okay.
Yes. There's a
Okay.
well. There's a
All
well
right.
like yeah.
Is it close to the electric?
Yes.
Okay.
I believe so. Yeah. I'll double check, but yes. My
Okay.
contractor like friend Nick was like, "Yep, what, he was looking at all that and he said yes." So I'm going to just go with what he said.
Okay. So chickens, they make messes with their food and they make messes with their water. We started out with chickens with like the typical kind of starter kit that you get at Rural King or Tractor Supply. They're just like kind of plastic buckets that you fill with water and then you flip them over and then the water kind of drains out and they
Yes.
can drink from it. And same with food. Those are fine when you are starting out with the little chicks, probably. But once you get to bigger birds, they just make such a mess. Chickens, they are very dirty. Okay, so that's one thing that like
Mm.
you just need to accept going into it that they are filthy.
Okay.
But they also just like to make messes. Um, so what we have had the best success with for water is using what's called a poultry nipple, and it's actually just like this little tiny thing that you can screw into whatever plastic vessel that you want. And the chickens, eventually you teach them how to do it, but it's like it's like the same concept of those little waterers for like gerbils and
Yeah, like
hamsters.
hamsters. Hmm.
Yeah, it's not the same kind of a deal. And so you can screw it into whatever container you want. The bigger, the better, obviously. And especially during summer, you should keep that water in a place where it's shaded.
Okay.
That way it doesn't get super, super hot. That has been fantastic for us just because the water doesn't get all dirty. Because they will kick dirt into their water and it will get icky. So, especially when you will not be there every day, if you can keep things as clean as possible, that will be the most helpful too.
Okay.
So, that's water. In our setup, our water is not in an enclosed area or like it's enclosed by a fence, but it's not enclosed by hardware cloth. So, technically a raccoon could get up in there overnight and get at it, but that doesn't really bother us too much. Now, the food. Through our chicken journey, we have gone through many different placements of our food. And just like animals will go after your chickens, they will also go after the chicken food. We have had a few casualties thanks to raccoons, but the terrible thing is that the raccoons don't actually want the chickens, they just want their food. And when they get scared or to try and get the food, they will kill a chicken to do it. So your food, you also have to keep kind of locked up, just as locked up as you keep the chickens. It will also prevent other rodents like mice or something from getting into it. There's different feeders out there that say that they are like raccoon proof, blah, blah, blah. We have tried them and they are not raccoon proof. Raccoons are very smart. And we actually tried one of those. We went on vacation for a while. We came back and found out that our poor chickens didn't have food for a little bit because some raccoon had gotten in there and eaten all their food. So after all those experiences, that is why we choose to keep our food locked up. So I think I mentioned a bit ago that we have 2 doors. We have like the coop where they sleep. That is no food or water, just where they sleep and lay eggs. Then they go downstairs and that is where their food is.
Oh.
And then there's a second door that is also an auto door, and that closes to keep their food safe. That way there's no animals trying to get into that food overnight, and it keeps it a lot better. We've also discovered that keeping the food close to where they sleep is best, because a lot of times, they'll be hanging out, trying to go to bed as late as possible, basically. And they'll be sitting there just like getting a midnight snack almost and then go up to bed. So if you keep the food close, yes, if you keep the food close to where they are going to bed, that works out well, because if in, some case a predator would come by, they could at least run up into the coop and be safer in there.
Okay. Yeah, no, that does make sense. Now, will you give us like links to like your favorite chicken products? That would be great. And then I can throw them in the show notes.
Oh, yeah.
And that way, if anybody's interested, they can just click on it and, buy the things. Because it's so helpful when you already have all this experience, using. Yeah. And I know, like, as I've been following you for, I guess it's been a couple of years now. And I've seen it when I remember you had some issues with one of the doors that you had bought. And it was watching you kind of go through testing out all these different products, and then we can benefit from that.
Yes, that is why, that story specifically, that is why I said having power in a powered door rather than batteries is good, because it was a couple of Thanksgivings ago. I knew that the batteries in our door were dying, but I would just go out there every night and I would shut it myself and it was fine. But then one night we weren't home, and of course the door didn't shut, and that was the night that a raccoon got in and killed 2 of our chickens. So
yeah, that stinks.
Now, of course, it was my fault because I should just change the freaking batteries.
Sure, but that's, I mean, and that's normal. That's normal adulting. There's things that, how long have we let the smoke detector chirp before we find, you know what I mean? Like, everybody's done it, so I can totally relate to that 100%. Okay, so what about like food? Because obviously they're getting, like whatever bugs and stuff when they're out in their run, but they need to be supplemented with food too. And I know that's the whole thing with like non-GMO. Like, I know a lot of like customers who buy through my collab, they want to make sure that the eggs are, the chickens aren't eating like garbage, they're eating good stuff.
Yeah. When we started out, we used a company that was all organic, and they're like, the biggest thing to me in terms of chicken food is not having soy.
Yeah.
I didn't necessarily care if it was organic or not, but at that time it seemed like the best choice for us. The protein source that was in it was fish at that time, and the food just kind of smelled. And so we eventually got away from that food, and we have fallen in love with the brand Grubbly Farms. I adore their food because the protein source in it is actually made of bugs, which is what chickens normally eat. Now, chickens will eat anything because, like, believe me, I've fed them cans of tuna before. Like, our chickens will eat just about anything. But the fact that the protein source of this food is made with bugs, that just made sense to me.
Yeah,
And so
for
that is
sure.
what we do buy for our chickens. It's not organic, but really what I started to realize is I feed our chickens so much random crap from our kitchen that not
Sure.
all of it is organic, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
And so, because like they're the garbage disposals of the family. And so they get all of this other stuff. So in my head, it was like, well, they're not going to be eating a strictly organic diet, so why buy? Anyways, so they
Yeah.
eat Jersey Farms. I love it, or they love it.
I was like,
Um,
wait a minute.
but we do feed them a lot of scraps from the kitchen. Really, any veggie scraps we have, except for onions or garlic or just onions, we will feed them. So they eat all that. They can eat meat. That's one thing that makes me so mad when you go to the store and you see vegetarian chicken. They don't want
Yeah.
to be vegetarians. I swear,
No,
every
they're
time.
omnivores.
Yes, they love meat.
Yep.
Absolutely love it. Whenever, like, we hunt. And so every fall, when we have a deer carcass, we will put the rib cage in there and they freak out. It is the best time of year for them. They are.
That's it. That's the whole thing with like the market. I mean, don't even get me
Uh-huh.
started with the marketing and the greenwashing and like all this crazy stuff. It's like when you just learn about, chickens aren't vegetarians.
No,
It's like
no, no, no.
that's just not the way it is. So yeah, okay, Grubbly Farms, and then you can give us a link to that too,
Yeah.
I
Uh-huh.
suppose. That's awesome. And I know one of my farmers had, a real issue with she was spending like more money getting, organic, non-GMO, soy-free
Mhm.
feed, and they stopped laying. She was having trouble with production because of
Huh.
this particular feed. And so she tried a bunch of different things. And of course, they're regenerative farmers. So they're giving their chickens, like you, I mean, they're giving their chickens like other things too.
Yeah.
But so she had to go back. And I think it was the soy. I can't remember.
Okay.
But I think it was literally like having no soy, or it kind of made the like protein level off or whatever. And so she was like, we want to be like giving the best to our customers, but
Mhm.
we also want our chickens to lay eggs,
Right.
and so it's so interesting because I agree. Like, I definitely want to source the most healthy food for my family. And there are some things that are deal breakers for me, but in a lot of ways, I'm just like, look, I mean, buying local is so much better than
Yes.
buying organic, eggs in the store. I
Oh, yeah.
mean, it's better, even if they're not like true free range on a giant, 7 acre farm. Like, it's still better. It's still better getting it local than it is. So you kind of have to, you're going to have to make compromises in some
Exactly.
ways. Yeah,
Right.
for sure.
Right.
Okay, so let's get to the good stuff.
Uh-huh.
So I want like the pretty magical, like when I open my egg carton from my farmers, like I opened one last night to make a big frittata for like the hubs because he's at the office this week, and it was like she puts them in there like, all the colors, like all the
Yeah.
way down
Like
to
in
the
a
dark
rainbow.
brown, and I'm like, oh, so that's
Mhm.
the part I want to know is like you have to get a certain chicken like variety or whatever
Yes.
to okay, give me the skinny on that.
So, our two favorite breeds happen to be the breeds that lay green or blue or, the colorful fun eggs. Olive eggers, they can lay any sort of green egg. Easter eggers, which can also be known as Americanas,
Okay, I've heard of that
they
before.
can, yes, they can lay blue, they can lay green, they can lay kind of pinkish ones. Ours generally lay green, but those guys, they're so cuddly too, at least in our
Aw.
experience. Now, of course, everybody's going to be different, and of course, it also depends on how often you handle the chicks when they're babies, but they are so cuddly. My husband's favorite chicken, she literally gets jealous if he pets somebody else.
Okay, that's funny.
She will come on over and peck them in the head.
Okay, that's funny. I don't think I knew that about
Oh,
chickens.
yes,
That's
they
really
can be
funny.
so cuddly. They are very, like, they do. They do have their own little personalities. Because we've had some Easter eggers that aren't as cuddly, but they generally are social.
Okay.
There's also the variety that lays blue eggs. They're called, oh my gosh, it's totally escaping my mind at the moment. But they, ours is very, I don't know, I think we got the runt of the litter, because some of the ones that I've seen on Instagram, they're very like robust. But oh my gosh, what the heck? I'm gonna have to
It'll
look.
come to you.
I'm sorry.
And then there's like isn't there like a dark brown egg
Yes, that is
layer or
a
olive?
a cream leg bar. Okay, there we go. I don't know why I couldn't remember her.
Cream leg bar?
Yes, cream leg bar. They will lay blue eggs. Ours, again, she's just a very, very tiny chicken. I think she's only laid us a few eggs in her life. But you know what? She still hangs out. She's still here. Now, the
Aw.
dark ones, they are called black copper Marans.
Okay.
And our experience with them is that ours was very mean. We actually got rid of her just because she was so mean. I have heard that that is generally not the case, but
Okay.
again, it just goes to show that they have personalities just like people, you know. Um, One thing though that I do think is a very true trait is broodiness. Some varieties of chickens, they like to sit on eggs. Those are generally the ones that have the biggest, fluffiest butts. For us, those have been Orpingtons and also Australorps. Those generally lay brown
Oh,
eggs.
names of those. Good Lord. Will you
Australorps,
give me like
yes,
show
I
notes so I
can.
can paste it? Because
Uh-huh.
I don't even know how to spell that.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
okay.
okay.
So broodiness. What does that mean?
That is when they just want to be moms.
Okay.
They, oof. So here's one thing. Daily chores, even if you're not having to fill up their food and water every day, egg collection. If you leave eggs in there for too long, these Australorps and Orpingtons, they will think that they can sit on those eggs and hatch them out.
Okay.
I swear, if we leave for vacation and like the eggs go a day or two without being collected by our neighbors, we come back to a broody chicken.
Yeah, and they're like, get away from my babies.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Which it can be useful because actually last year was the first year that we had two broody chickens raise our chicks that we got last year. And it was wonderful. It was a beautiful thing to see. But those chickens, now that they are adults, they are still a little bit scared of us. And I think it's
Okay.
because they weren't raised by us. It was because they were
Yeah,
raised.
that makes a lot of sense. And so two questions. One, when do they start laying, and then how long do they lay eggs? Because I know there's probably like a life cycle there where they'll stop.
Mhm.
And then my second question is rooster. Get a rooster or not get a rooster?
Okay. So, chickens. The soonest to lay would probably be like 5 months, but that would be of a high production breed like a white leghorn or a Rhode Island red or something like that. But generally, it's about 6 months.
Okay.
So, all the people, who are buying chickens right now thinking that they're going to get eggs really soon during the shortage, it's not going to be soon.
Okay.
Just, I hate to say it, but it's a process. And also, during wintertime, it is very, very natural for for chickens to really not lay eggs.
Sure.
Now, in their first year of life, they generally will produce eggs throughout winter, but for their second year, they turn it off.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. And we see that at the farm, at the
Yeah.
my collaborative that's the eggs are not as plentiful.
Oh,
And
yes.
so
Yeah,
how
they're
I was going
they're
to
they're
ask.
very sensitive to the sun because like during
Okay.
winter, this past winter, we had four younger girls and they were laying eggs throughout the winter, but right now when it's spring, I'm getting like 9 or 10 a day. So,
Wow.
and those are
Okay.
from my older girls. And of course, the older they get, they might lay an egg maybe once or twice a week. Like the one that is my husband's favorite, right now. Hers are very distinct eggs because they're like very long and like a torpedo. So when she lays an egg and it's like once or twice a week. But she's 5 years old. And
Okay.
so,
Oh, that's kind of long. So they'll
yeah.
lay eggs for that long?
Oh, yeah, they can. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the general life expectancy, I think, is probably 5 years or so.
Okay.
Um,
That's a
but some
long time.
are about longer.
And then what do you do after that? Do you eat them? Or do you just,
We do not. We haven't eaten any of our egg layers. Now, roosters, though, that's a different story. Um, I am probably not the best person to ask about roosters because we have had two or three accident roosters. Accidents. Because when we ordered our chicks, we didn't want them to be
yeah.
boys, but they ended up being boys, and sometimes that happens. So you do have to be prepared for that. Um, I've tried my hardest each time to try and keep them around for a long time, but I just haven't been able to deal with it. Personally, I don't know. So we've eaten them. We've
Yeah, I
fed
was gonna
them.
say you're not I know my niece, she had a rooster that was like pecking her kids and she was like, screw it, and they just ate him. So,
Yeah,
you know. So
yeah.
you get a rooster, if I'm understanding it, because they're like protector,
Yes. Oh yeah.
but then of course then you could have fertilized eggs, so you have to
You
be
could.
really careful about making sure you
Uh-huh.
get the eggs out.
Correct.
But they also can be mean,
Mm-hmm.
and nasty. So, but you don't need a rooster. You can
No.
have a bunch of happy girls and you don't need a
Oh
rooster.
yeah.
Okay, that's good. That's good to know.
Yep.
I don't need any complications, so I don't know. Maybe I'll just
Yeah,
not get a
roosters,
rooster.
they just make things complicated, and you can go into it so well intentioned and thinking that it's all going to work out. But if he's attacking your kids, or if
Right.
he's really being harsh on the hens,
Yeah.
it's a hard thing to watch. It really is to see him do his business. I remember the first time I saw it happen, I was traumatized. I
Oh no.
I
Okay.
was traumatized.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure my kids are probably gonna be like, "What is going on here?"
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and they're already like, because they're not really farm kids. I mean,
Mhm.
so they're like, we're gonna get chickens, and then they're like, oh, the babies are so cute. I'm like, well,
Yeah.
yeah, but we have to take care of them. And you got to feed them and water them, and you got to clean out their poop. And they're all like, what? So I don't. I think if there was like an attack rooster, I just don't want to.
No.
I don't want to. I don't want to deal with that. So,
Yeah.
um, so this has been like super good information. I feel way more prepared, honestly, just in
Okay,
this
good.
short. We've been talking for a little less than an hour, and I already feel like I have a much better like handle. Um, I have like a last few questions.
Sure.
Where do you get your chicks from? You have like a favorite place?
Well, so personally, I would go with whatever hatchery is closest to you. Now,
Okay,
obviously, not everybody is going to have a hatchery near them. We are fortunate enough where our closest hatchery is like a 45-minute drive. So for us, it's worth the time to be able to drive down there and pick them up.
sure.
Now,
Okay,
last year though, we did pick up chicks at our rural king. Um, and it worked out just fine. They ended up actually all being girls like they were supposed to be. So there's nothing wrong with either way. It's just that I don't know. I have a hard time wrapping my head around getting chicks in the mail. You
yeah,
know?
I know. I see because I know a lot of like the homesteaders I follow get
Yeah.
their chicks from McMurray,
Yeah.
which is
McMurray
like out
Hatchery.
west. And I'm
Yeah.
like, geez, that's like a big buck. And they're like, the chicks are at the post office. I'm like, that's so weird.
Right.
So I know, like, I feel like I would just want to go somewhere, like you said, or even a Tractor Supply.
Yes.
And
And again, it's about buying local too, because
yeah,
there's going to be different breeds of chickens that are more cold hardy. And there's going to be some that are better to, withstand the heat. Generally, a rule of thumb is that if a chicken has a comb, so that's the thing on top, if it's shorter and more like dense and stuck to their head, that generally means that they'll be a little bit more suitable for winter, because what can
okay.
happen is if you have the chickens with the really tall floppy ones, those can get frostbite really
Oh,
easy
okay.
during the winter time. Now, the comb and the wattles, that's the things underneath their head, those actually help to cool them down. So the bigger those are, that actually can help them tolerate the heat a little bit.
Okay. Wow. All right.
So those are things just to keep in mind too. It's the same thing about like people who buy bees through the mail. I mean, if you're buying them from within your state, that makes a little bit more sense. But like buying chickens that are more acclimated to your area, it just it
Yeah,
it just is better. They're
it
gonna
does
be
make sense.
yeah.
Um, My last question, and then I'm gonna like switch topics on you. Hopefully you
Okay.
don't mind. My last question is, you had mentioned when you get them and they're babies and they're so cute and you got to keep them warm, you keep them in your house for a while. Um, when are they ready to go like outside? How long you
Generally,
got
the
to keep
rule
them?
of thumb is that, oh, so also keeping them in a dog crate is fantastic
Oh, okay.
because you think that they won't be able to hot, like our first time, we kind of made like we taped a bunch of boxes together and tried to make like a little enclosure for them. They hop over those walls very quickly. So a dog crate is great because it has a roof. Um, Okay, so when can they go outside? Generally, the rule of thumb is that you want them to be fully feathered, meaning
Okay.
that all of the fluff has gone away and they have adult feathers. That can take anywhere from like a month to 6 weeks. But of course, you also want your outside temperatures to not be super, super cold because you don't want them to go into a big shock. So if they're
Okay.
fully feathered and the daytime, or well, the overnight temperatures are in the 50s, I think you would
Okay.
probably be safe. But again, they're going to be in the 50s, but they're going to be in their coop where they can all huddle up together and stay warm that way.
Okay. Okay. That's great. Okay, so I know we're a little over an hour, but and I don't want to. I'm not going to talk about this for a long time. Maybe we'll do another episode if we. But I listened to your podcast about your surgery.
Oh, gosh, okay.
I actually listened to it today,
Uh-huh.
and one thing struck me. So you were talking about your experience as a woman who is not going to have children, and kind of
Uh-huh.
how you just felt like you were just sort of dismissed and not
Yeah.
like taken seriously
Yeah.
when you're going to, and I think the majority of my listeners are probably women too. And it just struck me because I thought, what the truth is,
Mm-hmm.
when you have babies you're completely dismissed and not taken seriously. And
Oh,
I
because then the
almost had,
babies become the focus. Yeah.
not even that, it's
Oh.
just like women in general, like it's a huge, it's something that has bothered me as long as I've had kids. I've birthed three, I've adopted one. I always, in my mind, thought women in general, I don't think I ever thought like specifically women who didn't have kids got better treatment. I just think
Uh-huh.
women in general get crappy care.
Yeah.
And when you're having a baby, you are just not listening. Like everything that you experience with your first doctor, like not listening to you, not taking you seriously, you're like bringing up things and they're like, oh, it's just stress, or it's like, oh my gosh, it made me so mad. I was like, oh, this is what I've experienced with all three of my births.
Oh.
Never took me seriously, and I feel, and I know this is a very strong statement, and this is probably going to piss people off. I believe 100% that women who are pregnant and going through our healthcare system are actually victimized. I 100%
Okay.
believe it. And I, story after story after story, and you could probably talk to 10 different women who have had babies, and they will probably all have, probably 9 out of the 10 will be like, well, yes, I mean, this, I didn't really know they were going to do this, or yeah, they really pressured me to do this, or it, I'm telling you, it just, so I want to just say to you that as a woman, I was just so just struck by your experience, and I just feel like it totally resonated with me, and it makes me really mad. It makes me mad. I was like mad. I'm like, how do they like not listen to her? Because you're not a crazy, like you're a very
No.
reasonable person, and it's like the things that you brought up, and then for how many years that you
Yeah.
had. So those of you who don't know, go listen to Laura's podcast, and then you can know what I'm getting all riled up about. But I just want to just tell you, I was going to text you, and then I'm like, you know what? I'll just bring it up on the podcast. I'm glad you recorded that,
Thank you.
because I think every woman is going to have a similar story, or the same in some ways, the same story, whether you have kids or not. It's just, I don't know what the heck it is,
Yeah.
but it's just like, and I don't think it's like a gender thing. Like, I'm not saying like women are, marginalized. I'm not saying that. I
Yeah.
just feel like our system is set up in general that women don't really know what's going on. It's so complicated. You just don't understand,
No, we're not taught. We're
No.
not taught what is going on in there, what should be going on in there. And because we're supposed to be the caretakers of everybody.
That's right.
You know, your care gets put put down on the list.
Yeah. Well, and it's just, I just always found, like, even when I had my first baby, I was 24.
Hmm.
And now, like, when I had my last, I was 41. And so I'm like full on crunchy at this point. So I know way more than I knew. At 24, I didn't know anything. And I just remember so many times, and it happened with every single person that took care of me in some way or another. They just acted like I didn't know anything. And they knew more than me because they were a doctor or because they were a nurse. And with my daughter, I had never had a baby before, so I didn't really know what was to expect per se, but I knew she was coming. And I'm like, yeah, they just induced me. And it was an hour and a half later, which is, unheard of, right? You don't
Yeah.
have a baby that quick. But I was
No.
like, she's coming. And the nurse, I remember, oh my gosh, I remember like yesterday, my sister almost like punched her in the face. My sister was like mama bear, like big time mad about it. But she looked at me and she said, honey, you've got 18 more hours of this. So you better get control of yourself. So a 24-year-old brand new mom who'd never had, and you're gonna, I
Wow.
mean, I wouldn't talk to any woman like that, let
No.
alone a brand new mom who had no idea what was going on.
Yeah.
And so, but she was coming. She was literally coming. She was being born and no one believed me. And so that was my first experience. And then subsequent births, same exact thing. Probably my last one because I really was selective on who I chose. I chose a midwife. Everyone else, totally condescending, acted like I was literally like I had one foot in the grave because I was so old. My uterus was so old.
I swear. Yeah.
Yeah, my eggs were so old. So, I mean, the stuff they would say to me, and I look back and I'm like, why would you ever say that to people? I just don't even get it. But she was the only person that was just believed me, trusted my gut, trusted my instincts, and was supportive. But that's it. Every other experience I've ever had has always been like, dear, dear, you don't really know what's
Yeah.
happening. And I'm like, no, I do. I absolutely know. And like you said, you knew. You said that a few times.
Yeah.
You were like, and so I self-diagnosed and I diagnosed myself, or I knew, and I'm like, it just resonated with me. And I just wanted to say, thank you for recording it. And honestly, I think you should talk about it more and get more people to listen to it because
Thank you.
it's not okay. It's just not okay, but it's universal for women. I don't know what
Yeah.
the deal is, but we
I
are,
got it.
I'm sorry, we're smart
We are.
and we know what we're talking about and you need to listen. Okay, that's it.
I got a lot of messages about that episode with people saying, again, just, thank you because it brought up their own health journeys and their own experiences. And so, yeah, it does need to be talked about more because we do know. We are
We
so
do
much
know.
more in tune with our bodies than I think anybody gives us
100%.
credit for.
100%. And even if you don't know, just be kind and take people seriously.
Right.
It's like it just feels like it's just like take a number. I got 3 minutes for you, and then I'm on to the next person. I mean, and my daughter just had her first baby,
Hmm.
and so kind of watching her go through that journey. Praise the Lord, I mean, she knows so much more at 28 than I knew at 24 when I had her. So she's probably more educated as far as like what's like natural because they want to just do so much medical intervention, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So she just is very well educated across the board. So she was better able to advocate for herself than I was because I didn't really know and I didn't have a mom to teach me these things. But I still saw like nuggets of ways where she was just completely condescended to, and I was like, mm. And I just kept my mouth shut because she's able to take care of herself. She was just, kind of bulldogging it, and she was like, "Look, back off, my baby lady." Um, but yeah, I just wanted to mention it. I know it's not chicken topic, but
That's all right.
yeah, go listen to it. If you're listening to this, follow Laura, the Girly Homesteader. Go listen to that. I mean, you have a bunch of other really great topics, which I really like because we can kind of fall into like a little, niche.
Yeah.
Gardening,
Right.
yeah, preserving,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
and but we're more,
We are
we're
more than that.
complex beings.
We are.
Yeah. So anyway, so thank you for doing that, and thank you for all this
Thanks for having
amazing
me.
information.
Yes, and I will write everything down and I'll email it to you, and then you can put in the show notes, and then
Yes.
it'll be a list.
Yeah, so now everybody can like walk in with the, like open eyes and get all their
It
little chicken
is
babies.
having chickens, it is amazing. It really is. Once you figure out your systems and your best way to do it, like it really is wonderful. I can't imagine not having them anymore.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
What are your, we'll end with your chicken names. What are your chickens' names?
Oh boy. Okay, so our different generations, they all have different themes of names. That way we can keep them all straight. So the first generation, those were old ladies. Well, old lady names. Some of them, most of them are from our family though.
That's cute.
Um, my favorite chicken, her name is Penelope. She's not a family member, but my husband's favorite chicken, her name is Aggie. She was named after one of his grandmothers. We also have Louise. She was named after the very loud lady who lived across the street from our old house. We have Betty. Those are the
Oh,
four. Those are the four remaining from our first generation. Oh boy. Okay, let's see if I will actually be able to remember all of the names.
I know you said you have 15, so
Yeah, we have 15. The second generation after that, those were flowers. That was not the. We don't have many of them. We don't have many of them left.
they just died or they got eaten.
Eaten and also some sicknesses. So that's another thing too. This could be a whole other conversation for another day. But you do have to be prepared for sickness.
Sure.
The dog crate that you bring your chicks, that you put your chicks in, that is also great to keep them separated when they are sick, or if they get attacked or whatever. So, yeah, be prepared for injury and be prepared for loss. It's going to happen. But anyways, back to chicken names. We have, I think all of our flower ones actually have passed away. Fruits, we have a kiwi. She's the one that lays blue eggs. Um,
Oh, that's so cute.
okay, let's see. We have kiwi. We have mango. We have diamond. I'm just gonna start naming them all now. Diamond, ruby. Uh, oh gosh, emerald.
Sorry.
I don't know. We have. I would have to see them. They have to be in front of me. Plum. Oh no, they're plum.
Oh, that's cute.
Yeah.
Fruit ones. I
So
love that.
it'll be better if I tell you the different themes that we had. So first it was old ladies, then it was flowers, then it was fruits, then it was gemstones, and then this most recent one, they're different trees. So we have maple, walnut,
Oh my gosh, that's so
ash,
cute.
and willow.
Okay, that is cute. Well, coffee's got to be one, right?
Coffee should be
Latte,
one. Yes. Yes.
spices. Okay, you're
So then
giving me.
it helps us like remember how old they are too, and
That's so
approximately, you know what I
smart.
mean?
See, I'm glad I asked that question.
So
That's actually very
but yeah, I
practical.
cannot name all 15 off the top of my head.
That's okay. That's okay. But that's actually really practical, though. If you pick
Yeah.
like a theme, then you can
Mhm.
kind of keep track. Because,
Right.
the fly by the seat of the pants person doesn't write things down. I mean, I'm not going to write it down and say,
Yeah.
this is who came from what. So that's actually really
Right.
helpful. All right. Well, thanks, Laura, for
Thank you
educating
for having
everybody.
me.
And I'm definitely going to have you back because we got lots more
Okay.
things to talk about, I
We
think.
do.
All righty. Bye.
Bye.